Okay, now we're going to get into a little bit about the city and this kind of little complex web of requirements. And I hope that you'll bear with me a little bit, because as you'll see as we go through this, it was hard to decide how to talk this story down through from the start to the end. But we've heard many times when we've asked the city about the chloride issue, and the city has said, well, wait a minute, we're not in that purview. And so if it's not in our purview, we're not going to talk about it, or it's going to embarrass us, or whatever. And we don't do anything in relation to that. And we found out that's just not true. So this all comes down to your money. And I'm going to show you how you donate the money into this, and in part where the money goes, and a little bit of why I'm a little skeptical about how some of these things are done. So in many cases, I found that the answers to all these problems are hiding in plain sight. And tonight, we're competing with the sanitation district meeting, and it marks the end of deep well injection. So I haven't had anybody call me from the meeting and tell me what they decided, but I have a feeling that I know exactly what the answer was, because in the agenda for the meeting and in the staff report, remember this is April, this is the month where we get the big agenda with all the information about what the costs are going to be next year. What it said is there was a letter from the director, Hyde, and I'll show you the cover of it, and it said that at this point, the sanitation district staff is saying that the only method that they can use to get rid of the brine, to meet the time frame of their latest set of commitments, is through brine minimization and trucking off the remaining. So that's exactly what the West Ranch folks wanted. So I'm sure they're going to be very happy about it, and we'll probably read about that in the Signal tomorrow. But then there's discussion about drainage benefit assessment districts, or drainage benefit assessment areas. And in this case, we're going to talk about what's happening because of Shangri-La pumping and who's paying for it, and the questions that get arisen because of it. Because this was an issue where Lorraine West keeps jumping up and saying, we've been fined $900,000, and if we don't do this, the world is going to come to an end. So we'll talk about why that occurred. And it occurred because the city of Santa Clarita and the Regional Water Quality Board staff came up with an agreement. It was negotiated that way. It was discussed in Santa Clarita in closed sessions, and very little of it came out in the public, and I'll show you where it actually did, but you would never have known it. And that's where the $816,000 came from, where that money comes from. And that leads us into the stormwater pollution prevention district as well, because for some reason, some of the money came out of there. And we don't really understand whether or not that's truly a thing that they should have paid for, but we'll show you what they paid and why they paid it. So we have the sanitation district meeting tonight at City Hall, and this is the agenda. I get all the agendas. I don't expect you to read it, but it's the May 20th, 2015 meeting. They canceled the regular meeting, and then they scheduled this meeting at City Hall. And agenda item 4 is the staff progress report and their preliminary brine disposal screening analysis. And that's where it says in that little fine print that the staff has decided that brine minimization and trucking is the only available option. So this actually is the staff report. Just wanted to show you I actually had it. And now in bigger print, what it says, of these approaches, only brine minimization could be feasibly completed within the mandated compliance schedule. So that says no deep well injection. They've decided that's just out of the picture. They can't get it done in time. No pipeline to the joint outfall system, the 37.5-mile pipeline. This is the only thing that they believe they can do. And they said they're going to start an EIR process, and they're believing that the first public reviews of that EIR process will be in 2016. And they'll start the process in this summer, and in this summer there'll be scoping meetings. So let's look, and we'll try to make sure that we understand when those scoping meetings are, and when we can go to them and discuss what we believe the issues are. So, but also, what was interesting was in the sanitation district in agenda item number 5 tonight, will have the public hearing that increases your sanitation district rate from $267 a sewage unit to $287 a sewage unit. And if you remember what this was all about, this was all about the plan to finance the chloride reclamation, the RO section of the water reclamation plant to account for the regional water board's request that everything goes under 100 milligrams per liter of chloride. And what they were going to do, if you remember this discussion, was for the first 5 years, they were going to collect more money than they needed, and then they were going to have ratepayers pay for the rest of it out for 30 years. And so the assessment fee justification comes from the sanitation board again, and I think it couldn't have come on a better date because it came out on April the 1st, 2015, and they talked about everything in the world except that plan. And I'm a little disappointed in it. Of course, I've seen a lot of this kind of stuff from Hyde and the sanitation district. So let's connect the dots. We're going to connect the dots for all the things that we're going to talk about tonight, and that is that this is the sanitation district water reclamation plant in which they're going to add RO. And if you remember, option number 2, which was the deep well injection, was going to cost $130 million. And where they're going to get that money from is they're going to get it from property tax bills. That's the $287 per year that the 94,000 sanitation unit users pay in. It's going to come from developer connection fees, so that every single time someone adds a sewage unit to the sanitation district, they get the honor of paying an additional $5,000 for that connection. And it supposedly is the amount of money it would take to build the amount of the plant necessary to support one sanitation unit. And then they're also applying for grants. And so you can see that's where the original discussion of the monies were going to come from. So now let's just break off for just a minute and let's talk about understanding what drainage benefit assessment districts are and the city of Santa Clarita's involvement with the chloride issue. Because up until this point, I had no idea what they were. I've heard people say for forever, you know what, we're pumping 67,000 gallons a day out from underneath Shangri-La. That's up by where our library, where the Canyon Country Library is. And we're pumping that water out, and we put that water into the river, and we got fined about it. And so the world would come to an end if we don't build the chloride reclamation plant RO system. But I found out, as you'll see in just a minute, that's not true. We're pumping 70,000 gallons a day out, 70,000 gallons a day out from underneath that area. And so you can actually find information about drainage benefit assessment districts right on the city website, because every single year they have to produce an engineer's report. And there it talks about what the purpose of that is, and it's to involve the maintenance and operation of subsurface and surface drainage systems for a tract. And the reason why that English isn't very good is because I took it straight out of a sentence in the report. And oddly enough, it's not just 1 or 2 areas that have this issue, but there are whole bunches of areas that have this issue. Sanitation Drainage Benefit Assessment Area 3 is White's Canyon and Nadell, where they were having water come up from underneath the ground. I think it's on the other side of White's Canyon. Shangri-La, both of these two, number 6 and 18 are in Shangri-La. I believe Four Oaks is another place where they're pumping. And the rest of them have to do with drainage culverts and areas that they're providing some method of handling drainage that's coming out of the, or anticipated drainage problems. And look, Via Metro's in there. They're right in there for new, and River Village. And so it's interesting because you're going to see where the money's come from different areas. And remember, I want you to remember when we have this discussion, that Proposition 218 assessment districts, says that a district must provide the special benefit to the involved properties. So you can't turn around and say, you know what, we need drainage benefit assessment areas, so I'm going to charge your home. Even though you're not anywhere near any of these problems, I'm going to charge you a fee so that we can solve that problem. That's not the way this is supposed to work. It's supposed to work that every time that there is an issue and it creates a special benefit to a particular piece of property, that's the only thing that particular district can handle. And then each one of these districts provides or generates yearly engineers reports. And in some cases, like in the drainage benefit assessment areas, they've grouped the different districts together, produced one report that talks about them all. Now here's where the stuff comes in plain view, and you probably never even know it. I didn't know it. I had to sit there and play with this for a couple of days and look at it. You see, each one of these engineers' reports, they define the district area, and they define the services to be provided, but they only talk about what's going to be provided. They don't talk about what's already been provided. So every year what you see is, you see what's going to happen in that what's anticipated to happen in that next year, and they never talk about what happened last year, and you'll see why that's important in a minute. And it talks about their yearly assessments, and it also talks about increasing the fees. And they have yearly fee escalators, which typically, and in these, represent the CPI, or the Consumer Price Index. So as the Consumer Price Index goes up, they can raise the price of that district by that index. But remember that they still have to provide them just to one place, and they can't really charge more than what the services are, or they're not supposed to charge more than what the services are that they're providing. So for this discussion, let's just concentrate really on these two districts, these two drainage benefit assessment areas, which is the Shangri-La Drive and Nathan Hill Road, and the Bakerton Street, which is Shangri-La. And the reason why I want to discuss only those two is because for this discussion, we're going to talk about their connection with the City of Santa Clarita and the Regional Water Quality Control Board. So up here on number 6, they have one pump station and 3 observation wells with pumps, 6 observation wells without pumps, 1 access shaft, and on and on and on. I didn't know that was there. If you live in the area, I don't know if you know that's there, but they're all there. And then in 18, there's 1 pump station, 1 sump pump drainage system, 5 access shafts, 21 observation wells without pumps. And those all have to be maintained, and they're to stabilize that hill, to keep that hill from coming down. Actually, if you remember, not too long ago, they had water coming up from underneath the library, right? Well, that's some of this water that they're pumping out. So if we talk about Shangri-La, these districts are formed as a condition of development. So they go through a development and they say, you know what, you have this problem. We need to go maintain it. We need to go make sure that the problem doesn't eat away at the hill. And so they take the parcels and the services they need. They form a drainage benefit assessment area. It's typically done by the developer during development because they know that this is an issue before they start. And per the City of Santa Clarita and Regional Water Board agreement, they were looking at the fact that both number 6 and number 18 pump groundwater, and originally they discharged it in the river. So what we're talking about is we're talking about water that you pump out of the ground, that you now put on the ground, and the Regional Water Board says, not good enough quality. You have to clean it up. It's got too much chloride. It's got too much nitrates. Now what's incredible about this is if you would have taken that same water and you would have put it on plants and irrigated with it, Doesn't fall under the permit. Nobody goes and gets a permit for well water to put on the ground on their landscape, right? But if you put it in the river, then it falls under the Regional Water Quality Board's permit. And so, like I said, number 6 discharges 3,000 gallons a day, and number 18 is 67,000 gallons a day for a total of 70,000 gallons a day. Now, if you go into their reports, and this is the latest report, this is the 2014 Drainage Benefit Assessment Area, what you'll find, oddly enough, is that going into 2014, they were running in the red. They had a balance of money that they owed of $900,000. And it comes out here at the other end, and guess what? They still owe it. So for some reason, these two benefit assessment areas have depleted their funds, and it says it requires city contribution. What does that mean? City contribution. It's interesting, isn't it? I thought it was amazing because I've never known anything else in the city where the city wasn't just absolutely anxious to go ahead and raise your fees so that they didn't have to contribute any money. Well, it's really interesting because those two areas, I went back and pulled every report back through 2007. I stopped at 2007. And I found that they had been running a deficit since 2008. 2008, they went in the red. And then they've been running a deficit ever since. And for some reason, the city has not changed their assessment since 2007. So they don't have enough money. I'm not a great fan of raising fees. But I mean, if you have a service that you need and it's not paying for itself, and they have the ability to raise the fees based on the CPI, and they've gotten themselves in a position where now they're almost $1 million in the red, and they haven't raised the fees since, as far as I know, since 2007 or below. Doesn't that seem odd to you? Right? Okay. So at the city council meeting on December the 13th, 2011, under agenda item number 7 was the mid-year budget adjustment. And if you read the agenda item, it just said, we're updating the budget, blah, blah, blah. It really didn't say much. And if you went into the staff report was, a page and a half. There were 2 lines in the staff report. And what the 2 lines said basically was, we got to pay the Regional Water Quality Board $816,000, and we're going to take, we have an agreement that we're going to pay this to them, and we're going to take $399,000 from the drainage benefit assessment area, and we're going to take $417,000 from the stormwater district, and we're going to pay it. But it was just like 2 lines, 2 innocuous lines. Didn't say anything about a fine. Just said we're going to do it. No more explanation than that. And they said, well, this is a one-time cost, and it's contingent upon the water boards approving the city's supplemental environmental project, their SEP. Anybody know what that is? Wow, what a surprise. Neither did I. Okay? I'm amazed. So, the City of Santa Clarita and the Water Quality Control Board agreement, what does it do, and how does it affect the chloride issue, and who pays the bill? Well, I think you know who pays the bill, right? All right. What was amazing to me was I got this letter. You don't have to read the letter because I'm going to tell you approximately what it says. This came right off the Regional Water Board's website. And I'll bet you don't remember it. I'll bet you don't know anything about it. But what it says is, it says that if we implement this agreement, we've got to give you the ability, we've got to give you 30 days to comment on it. So you were given from January the 27th, 2012 to February the 29th of 2012 to comment. And I know you all saw it, you know. You didn't see it? Neither did I. And you know what I'm thinking about doing? I'm thinking about putting in a public records request. I want to see all the comments. And I'll bet I'll know how many there are. So in this agreement, the LA Regional Water Quality Control Board and the City of Santa Clarita, they said that number 6 and 18 were discharging water in violation of the permit that says what the quality of the water can be when you put it in the river. And the thing I noticed is it has a long list of charges based upon dates. And if you know, I noticed that, you know, in 2000, between 2003 and 2008, they'd only calculated if the chloride was greater than 250 milligrams per liter. And then, whoops, wait a minute, after that, it dropped to 100 milligrams per liter or 56 pounds a day. And then there were nitrates, and then there were sulfates, plus more. And this is water pumped out of the ground and put on the ground. You didn't do a thing to it. I thought it was amazing and interesting. And it was signed by Sam Unger, who's the executive officer of the Regional Water Board, and Ken Polskamp, who's the city manager. Well, it's amazing. So I guess we should have all known about this. I mean, and what did we agree to do? We agreed to take $399 of the State Water Resources Control Board and give them that money for their cleanup and abatement account. In other words, we just gave it away. Have no idea what it's going to be used for, have no control of it at all. And we were going to take $417,000 from the sanitation, for the benefit of the sanitation district, not from the benefit of the city, for the benefit of the sanitation district. We're going to put it in escrow in support of the supplemental environmental project. And yes, I will tell you what that project is going to be. We agreed to pay our own attorney fees, but we also agreed on the right to waive a regional water board hearing or appeal in Superior Court or any other appellate court, and we agreed not to sue, and we agreed to everything that was in that agreement, which in fact says then that we agreed to the 100 milligram per liter requirement. And was this ever noted in public? No. The only thing that was noted in public was those 2 lines that said, you know, we're going to go pay this money. So what did the Regional Water Board agree to do other than taking our money? Well, they said they'd notice it for a 30-day review and comment period. And, well, I don't know, I guess they must have done something. And then it said that they agreed that if we comply, that it waives all their further future liability and claim on that issue. So this is a quote. See quote marks in the beginning and at the end? These are exact words out of the agreement. The city proposes to contribute $417,000 and beyond the developer condition contribution. What developer? To increase the total capacity of a temporary, potentially permanent chloride treatment plant at the Valencia Water Treatment Plant. You know, what we signed up to do is we signed up to do that for the whole plant. Remember that 5-year raise in rates and the 30 years of property taxes? That's supposed to account for build-out of the plant. What additional stuff? There is no additional stuff. So we knew that this money existed before, and I've gone at sanitation board meetings, and I'll do it again, and say, wait a minute, why don't you add in that $417,000 into the amount of money that you have? And they said, well, we don't know when it's going to be available, and we don't know anything about it. And they just flat out were lying to us, because there was actually a commitment date of when it was supposed to be supplied to them, and I'll show you that in a minute. Then it said, once Newhall Land enters a contract with the Santa Clarita Valley Sanitation District for it to construct and operate the proposed advanced treatment facility. What advanced treatment facility? Are we going to give away operation of our plant to Newhall Land? The city will execute a memorandum agreement that will cover requirements for financial assistance, required timelines, and progress reports. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but it makes no sense to me. What is Newhall Land going to run? I have no idea. All right, again, this is part of the supplemental environmental project. The city's financial support for construction of a treatment facility will provide an additional 10,500 gallons per day of water treatment plant treated down to 6 milligrams per liter for approximately 4,000 pounds per year of chloride removal from the wastewater treatment plant discharge. Once the treated water is blended with the city's contribution, will equating to an additional 190 sewage units discharging at levels of 98 milligrams per liter. That makes no sense at all unless you know what the input level is going to be, and they never mention it. So I don't know what they were expecting, but they're talking about building something in addition to what we're already building, and we're building it to build out. I don't know what the only thing that I think it can be is part of a permanent program that offsets some of the costs that you're currently being asked to pay. So like you said, on the council agenda item, December 13th, it talked about the $399,000 of drainage benefit assessment areas to the abatement account and $417,000 to for the SEP. And the stormwater district, why is the stormwater district giving away $417,000? This was an issue of the drainage benefit assessment area. So how is the stormwater district legally allowed to put $417,000 in there? I don't know. Where does the money come from? City council meeting agenda. And the original milestone was the construction of the treatment facility was supposed to be by May the 4th of this year, and they were going to issue a final report by May the 18th. What's today's date? So obviously, the agreement has to be modified or something's got to change. So if we look at the stormwater district, it basically is supposed to comply with the State Resources Board National Pollution Discharge Elimination System permit, and that is water that comes from any source, ends up in the streets, rain, overflow from sprinklers or whatever, and goes into the river. So here we can connect the dots again. Isn't that fun? No, it's not fun, huh? All right, here we go. Sand district, same thing. Grants, property fees, but now we've got an agreement from the city that involves our drainage benefit assessment areas and our stormwater districts, contributes money to the SEP, which should end up going back to the sand district, and the drainage benefit assessment area plan is to give $399 to the regional water board. And where does all the money come from? Well, it comes from you. It comes from your property taxes that goes and feeds these. So you can see why I had a little dilemma of how I was going to come and explain this in a straightforward way, right? So questions that need to be answered is, why wasn't it discussed in an open session? Why didn't people just come right out? Why didn't the city come right out and tell us about it? And they certainly didn't. And why doesn't the $399,000 or $417,000 show up as a line item in the drainage benefit assessment or the stormwater annual reports? And it's simple. I mean, it took me 4 or 5 hours to figure it out, but it's simple. The idea is that all those reports talk about what's going to happen next year. So if you talk about what's going to happen next year, and then you add in something else, the only way you can tell it happened is by looking at what the projected costs are going to be at the end of the projected costs at the end of the year, and then look at what they turned out to be at the beginning of the next year. And all of a sudden you see the big gap. You see where the money was. So typically, the way these reports are, they won't tell you anything that got added in after the projection of costs. And if they leave that out, they should have known. I mean, they supposedly, according to the city manager, they were negotiating this for 3 years. They should have known that those costs were going to be in there, but they didn't put them in. And why is it proper for the stormwater district to fund resolution of a drainage assessment issue? Isn't that using one district's money to fund a different district? It seems to me it is. And why, if District 6 and 18 have been running in the red since 2007, haven't the fees been increased for the CPI? And I think one of the reasons is because the other assessment areas are underrunning. And so when they say it's a city contribution, when you see the results at the end of this, where they turn around and they say, what's the balance of the district? They're just balancing the district as if the whole district pays for everything. And down at the end, they're still positive. So if they manage this as if it's one big district, even though you're paying for him and she's paying for her, it looks as if they still have money. But it shows that they're in debt. So it's a very much a group of questions and things that we need to get answers for. So that starts the discussion. Anybody have any questions? Well, are you as overwhelmed as I was when I tried to figure this out? All right. Well, you know, yes, go ahead. Well, that's a good question. That's a good question. It all comes out of the everything that I have, every number that I've quoted, every number that I've shown you, came right off either the sanitation district or the city website. Everything.
Well, we either need a forensic audit from the state capitol of the city, the Sand District, and the CLWA. Well, they're all in on this.
Well, let's follow this on, because you know what? It doesn't end here.